In this video, we're going to practice issuing basic commands on a Cisco switch using Packet Tracer. Now, if you want the latest version of Packet Tracer, all you have to do is go online and go to netacad.com/courses/packet-tracer and set yourself up a free account and enroll in the class Intro to Packet Tracer. And if you self-enroll in a Packet Tracer self-paced course, you can get access to Packet Tracer. So you don't have to necessarily be in a Cisco Academy. You can just self-enroll, get yourself a user account, and self-enroll in the course and download Packet Tracer. But for this video, I'm going to use Packet Tracer. So I have the latest version of Packet Tracer, although you could pretty much do this in any version of Packet Tracer, and we're going to get started. So for this, we're going to need a switch. So I'll go down here, I'll click on switches, and I'll grab a 2960 series switch and then click again to put it onto the workspace. Now, if we wanted a router, we could click on routers, and we could grab this new 4321 router, and we could use a router as well if we wanted to. I'm also going to demonstrate how to connect to the switch if you were, for the first time, using a PC. So to demonstrate that in a simulated environment, I'll grab a PC here. And so the goal is we have a switch, we have a router. The first time we use the switch and router, it doesn't have an IP address, so we need to console into the switch or console into the router. So you go to cables here where the lightning bolt is, and this is your console cable, the baby blue curved cable. So I'll click on it, I'll click on the PC, and I'm going to connect it to the RS-232 COM port, so the serial port, and then drag it over to the switch, click on the switch, and then you can put it into any of these ports. However, if you put it into Ethernet ports, it's not going to work. So you got to put it in the console port. And now I have a console connection to the switch. Now I could click on the end of that cable, and I could put it into the router and put it into the router's console port. Or click again, put it into the switch console port. Okay, once you have that set up, another thing that's nice here that I've done is I've gone to Options, Preferences, Font, and I've changed the command line interface font to size 13 to make it a little bit larger so it's easier to see. And you just click Apply. Okay, so I'll open up the PC, and in the PC has desktop applications, and we're interested in the terminal emulation program, or in this case the terminal, and you can see the default serial connection settings. We'll click OK, and I have a terminal connection, a console connection into the switch. If I press return, I have a console connection. Now that's the way you would do it in the real world. You would need a PC, a computer, a console cable, and the switch or the router. Now in Packet Tracer, you can kind of cheat by just clicking on the switch and then clicking on the CLI tab, and you can see the command line interface right away. You can just do it that way, and boom, you have a command line interface. And on the router, same thing. I could click on the router, and I can click on the CLI here, and right away I've got a command line interface. However, in the real world, that's not what happens. You need to have a computer, and you need to use a program like, I'll use it right now, PuTTY. So I open up PuTTY on my actual computer, and I would click on Serial, and then I would connect my computer to my switch with console cable, and if I have an adapter modifying it to USB, then I have to figure out which COM line I'm actually on. So for me, it would be like COM 7 because I've got a USB adapter. And then I would click Open, and I would have my console connection into my router or switch if I was using a physical device. But in this case, I'm just using the simulation program Packet Tracer. So now we have a console connection, we have command line interface into our switch, and we can practice putting in the commands. So first of all, I'm in user exec mode, and I can see the commands available to me by putting in a question mark. If I want to get to privileged exec mode, I type enable and press enter, and now I'm in privileged exec mode. I put in a question mark, and I see the commands available to me. More means I have to press the space bar to get more commands. So right now I'm in privileged exec mode. I can type disable, and I'm back to user exec mode. Enable, and I'm in privileged exec mode. To get to global config mode, it's configure terminal, and I'm in global config mode. I can exit, and I'm back out. Let's practice the command hinting. So I type CON, question mark, and I can see two options that start with CON. There's the configure command and the connect command. Okay, I want configure. Then I'm not sure what the next command is, so I put in a question mark, space and a question mark, and it tells me terminal. So now I know what the next command is. So terminal. Now I'm in global configuration mode. And that's the way it works. So the first thing I'll do in global config mode is say, all right, what commands are available to me? Question mark. All right, look, well, there's host name. So I want to put in host name to set the system's network name. All right, I'll press spacebar more, then I'll type host name and S1. Now the switch's name changes to S1. So I've set the host name. And that's what I've done right here. Now if I want to put a password on this console connection, we go into line configuration mode. So line console 0. There is only one console port, and that's console 0. So line console 0, and then password, and then whatever password I want. In this case, I'll put Cisco 12345. Now it has the password Cisco 12345, and I need the login command to make sure that I'm prompted for that password when I first enter the switch using the terminal emulation program. So I hit enter. So now that that's there, that's pretty good. Let's try it out. So I'll do an end command to get out. Maybe I'll type exit, and you can see I'm outside of the switch now. It says switch 1 console 0 is available, press return to get started. Okay, I press enter, and it asks me for the password. This is a password on line console 0 because I configured line console 0 with password Cisco 12345. So Cisco 12345. You can't see the password when you type it. It won't give you little asterisks or anything. You just have to trust that the password's there. All right. So now I'm in the switch. And in user exec mode, you have access to basic commands that will show you the status of the switch. Now, to configure the switch, you need to be in privileged exec mode, which is the enable command to get to privileged exec mode. And I want to put a password on this so that when someone tries to get into privileged exec mode where you can configure the switch, they have to put in a password. So to do that, we'll say configure terminal. And also, I can use command shortening, conf t, and I'm in global config mode, and I didn't even have to type the complete command because there's only one command that starts with conf in privileged exec mode, and there's only one command that starts with a t in privileged exec mode. So now that I'm here, I'll say enable secret. So we want to put the enable secret password, and we'll call it class 12345. So now there is an enable password. It's secret, which means it's hashed, and it's class 12345. So now if I say exit and I do control C, exit again, I press enter, I'm prompted for the password to get into the console, Cisco 12345, and then I type enable, and it wants the enable password to get to privileged exec mode. So class 12345. All right, now I'm in. So I've set up 2 passwords. Now if we want to look at these passwords and what they look like in the configuration, we say show run, and then I'll use a tab completion here. Show me the running configuration. The running configuration, this is our configuration that the switch is using to run off of right now in RAM. So the host name is S1. The enable secret is the 5 here means it's MD5 hash, and then here's the MD5 hash. So you can see it's hashed. But that's the enable secret password, but we can't see what it is in the configuration file because it's hashed. So that's a mild form of security. If we go down all the way to the bottom, pressing the space bar, you'll see that line console 0 has the password Cisco12345. Now this is not hashed. This is in clear text or plain text. It's right there in the configuration file for anyone to read if they can access the configuration file. So there it is, line console 0, password, and then login command. And that's the end of the configuration file. So we're going to put in some more commands here. Now one command we can put in is service password encryption to hide that password on line console 0. But before we do that, let's do the line VTY password. That's for line VTY virtual terminal access using SSH or Telnet. So let's see here, back to Cisco, back to my PC, there we go. So I'll need to go to global config mode to do this. And this time I'll say line VTY 0 to 15. So 16 virtual terminal lines for Telnet or SSH access. That's what we're going to configure. Password, I'll make it the same password, Cisco 12345. And then the login command. And now we have not only line console 0, but line VTY both configured. If we want to see it, Control C, show run, and I could just do command shortening and do show run and see it. Spacebar, 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 and there it is. Line VTY 0 to 4, password login, and then lines 5 to 15 also. So there it is. There's our lines configured. Console 0 has password Cisco12345. Line VTY 0 to 4 and 5 to 15 have the same password. Now, if we want to obfuscate this so you can't see the password, we go to global config mode and we type service password dash encryption. And notice here I have it listed wrong. I have service password space encryption. It's dash encryption. There we go. And you can see it. Hold on. Back to the, there we go, service password dash encryption, and there it is. So now Control C, show run, and we look and spacebar down, and you can see there is a type 7 hash on those passwords, and you can tell that because it says password 7. That means it's a type 7 hash. Now it's not secure, it's not good security, but there it is. So we've put in that little bit of obfuscation. So now comes the next thing. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a banner message of the day. To do that, we also have to be in global config mode. So banner, MOTD, we got a space here, and then our message. In between delimiters, we'll say no unauthorized access allowed, something like that. You should not be in here. So that's a message that will display when someone consoles into or logs into the switch using the console connection or using SSH or Telnet. So I have my banner message of the day. Also another command that I didn't cover in the last video is no IP domain dash lookup. No IP domain dash lookup, and that's to protect against mistyping names and then having the name try to resolve through DNS, and you end up kind of stuck in a loop there for a minute or two. One way to get out of that is Control Shift 6 to get out of that loop. Or you can say don't look up names using DNS. If I mistype a name, it's not a domain name, just don't look it up. Okay, the last thing, a couple more things we're going to cover here. Putting an IP address on the switch so you can manage it over Telnet or SSH, something like that. So, interface, VLAN 1. We put the IP address on the VLAN. In this case, the switch by default has VLAN 1 on all the switch ports. It also has a switched virtual interface called interface VLAN 1. So we'll enter it. Notice we're in interface configuration mode now. And we put in the IP address. We'll give it the IP address 192.168.0.2, the subnet mask, and hit enter. So there it is, IP address and subnet mask. And then to turn it on, no shutdown will bring the interface up, and the interface will go up. So you have to enable it with the no shutdown command. By default, interface VLAN 1 is shut down. And we can actually see that here in the configuration file before. Notice if I scroll up through my commands, interface VLAN 1 had no IP address and it was in a shutdown state. So by default, it's already there in the configuration file, but it's not active. Now, I've activated it. I've gone into it, I've given it an IP address, and I've enabled it. Also, if this switch is going to have an IP address on the network and you're going to manage it remotely, you may need to manage it remotely from a different network. In that case, the only way the switch will be able to reply to or communicate with you over a remote network is if it knows where the router is, where the gateway is, the way out of the network. So to do that, what we need to do is let's exit out of interface configuration mode, go back into global config mode, and set the default gateway. So IP default dash gateway, and let's say the router is located at 192.168.0.1. So the switch is 0.2, and let's say there's a router at 0.1, and that's our gateway. So now the switch will know where the gateway is. Kind of like any host on the network, if they want to communicate outside of the network, like your PC or computer, you need to know where the default gateway is. Okay, so that's this command right here. Then lastly, we need to save our configuration and then run a few show commands. So let's try that out. So we'll save our configuration. I'll do a Control-C to get to privileged exec node. Copy running config to startup config. So I'm copying the running configuration that we're using right now in RAM and saving it to the startup config file in NVRAM, which will persist if the switch has to restart. So the destination file name, startup-config, yes, you want to accept the default file name, just press enter, and we're done. We have a configuration. So now I could say show run, show me the running configuration, and there it is. But I could also say show start, and it'll show me the startup configuration. And once again, show start is short for startup-config. Run is short for, if I hit the tab key, running-config. I can also run the show IP interface brief command to see my interfaces. There's my switch ports. Notice there's no IP address on the switch ports individually, status down, protocol down, but all the way down here, VLAN 1, there's the IP address, and you can see it's in an up-down state. So its status, it's enabled, but the protocol's actually down because we don't have any Ethernet cables plugged into our switch. Our switch doesn't have any Ethernet cables plugged into it. But if we wanted to, we could solve that by taking this PC here, grabbing an Ethernet cable, connecting it to the fast Ethernet port and over to the switch to any of these Ethernet ports. And you can see there now there's an Ethernet connection on one of the switch ports. It happens to be to the same PC. So we should see a change in that status shortly. So let me, we'll see it. I'll fast forward time here. That's the fast forward button. Notice we've got two green lights, up arrows. And now if I run that command again, notice the messages here, the syslog messages showing that we had a change to up. I'll put the up arrow, repeat the command, and you can see now VLAN 1, the IP address is up and up. However, my PC here, this PC doesn't have an IP address. So I'll go to IP configuration and I'll give myself an IP address. I'm going to give this PC the address 192.168.0.100. I'll give myself a subnet mask, and let's put the default gateway. So now this PC has an IP address, just like the switch has an IP address. That means that if I go to this PC, I can open up not the terminal emulation program, but the command prompt, and I can ping the switch. and it should work. And we'll see here, it should take a second here, but it should work. There it goes. I got, first there was a timeout, and then I got 3 replies, so it's working. Now if I do it, they'll all work. All 4 pings will get responses and 100% response rate. Okay, so now I can communicate with the switch in 2 ways. I can console in to the switch, or if I wanted, I could telnet into the switch to manage the switch over the network using telnet. Now, one other command that we want to cover, so I'll go into my terminal, and the last command that we want to cover is show version. The show version command will show us information about the operating system and the physical switch itself. So it shows me with the show version command, there it is, show version. The Cisco iOS software is version C2960, version 12.2, revision 25. And it'll actually, it shows me basically the Cisco iOS version here, the operating system version, the Internetwork operating system version. What else? It shows me how many fast Ethernet ports there are, how many gigabit Ethernet switch ports there are. It shows me how much RAM I have and how much flash memory I have. So this is the flash memory here. Let's see here, what else does it show? It shows the model number, which is 2960, 24TT. It shows this, the version, the model number, and the image, everything. The configuration register is 0xF right here. What else? Just all kinds of things that it shows here. But mainly, the reason we wanted to do this was to see the software version. Also, it shows me the ROM bootloader, the bootloader software. Okay, and that's it for this video. That covers just the basic commands, getting started using the switch. Now, if you wanted to practice again, you could switch this console connection over to the router, and you would see that if you close the terminal and reopen the terminal, you'll have a connection to the router here, and you'll type no, and you'll end up with a router prompt. And you can try putting in the same commands. Enable, configure terminal, and you'll see that most of the commands are going to be very similar on the router as it was on the switch. Of course, there's different commands because it's a router, it's not a switch. But as far as the basic commands, configuring the console port and the VTY lines and setting up the host name, a lot of those commands, all those commands will be similar. The only one that'll be different is if we wanted to put an IP address on the router, we would do it through interface, in this case, gigabit 0/0/0, and that's where we would put the IP address, not on interface VLAN 1, but on the gigabit 0/0/0 interface, and that's where you would put the IP address, let's say 192.168.0.1, 255.255.255.0, no shut. And so now the router will have an IP address on gigabit 0/0/0. If we wanted to, we could then connect the switch to the router. Let's say we'll connect gigabit 01 on the switch over to the router on gigabit 0/0/0. And so now the router is connected to the switch, the PC is connected to the switch. When this interface comes up, we could probably ping the router through the switch. We'll give it a try here. Fast forward time. We've got green lights here, so on the PC, and I'll get back to privileged exec mode. Hold on, we'll go to the PC interface. That's the terminal. So desktop, command prompt. There we go. Command prompt. Ping 192.168.0.1, and there's the reply from the router. So once again, I wanted to make sure I was doing that pinging from the PC, not the switch. So I closed the terminal emulation program and opened the command prompt to do that. All right, that's kind of a long video, but I'm hoping that it's helpful for all of my students and people, anyone who's new to studying this material, or it's just nice just to get your basics out of the way.